A world where threats evolve faster than ever and every click can be a gateway to peril, staying informed and prepared can mean the difference between safety and a catastrophe. Welcome to Shieldcast, where we navigate the dark alleys of cyberspace and inform you of the latest news in cybersecurity. My name is George Ndongo, I will be your host, and alongside my co host Kevin Mogo, we dissect notorious breaches and reveal hidden vulnerabilities. We bring you the cutting edge tools and techniques that keep the digital world safe. Get ready for the raw, unfiltered insights from the front lines of cyber defense. This is Shieldcast, your insider's guide to the ever evolving cybersecurity battlefield. Welcome to another episode of the Shieldcast podcast. It's a fine morning over here, and today I believe we are going to focus on a more managerial or top level topic in cybersecurity. But before that, my name is George Ndongo. I am your host here at Shieldcast podcast. I'm an InfoSec researcher, and this is my co-host Kevin Mogo.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm also into information security and also testing of systems, also provision of security strategies and the rest. It's a pleasure meeting all of you. This being a good episode that we are also trying to cover today, and I'm happy with the feedback we're also getting from people. It's been good so far. Let's keep on conversing and let's make security space better.
Yeah. As you said, thank you for the feedback. Keep it coming. It helps us to make the show better and better every day. So we appreciate you, everyone. Thanks. Yeah. So today's topic is threat intelligence.
Yeah.
And just to kind of break down what we're going to cover today, some threat intelligence lifecycle, some types of intelligence, sources of threat intelligence, some of the CTI tools available, and also maybe wind up with some ethical considerations so far as threat intelligence is concerned.
Yeah.
But to start us up, we kind of have to define it, and as we go, dive deep into threat intelligence.
Yeah, sure. So just from the name, we all know what a threat is. We all know what intelligence is. So it's like a connection between the two, the threat and the intelligence part. So when you talk about this thing, it's more of you trying to find out something. So there's some information gathering. And what are we gathering information about? We're gathering information about the commonly perceived threats to our organizations. So there are a lot of factors and there are a lot of methods that can be used to gain these threats. And also, after gaining this information, what are we able to do with it so that we can be able to transform them into security insights that can be able to improve the security infrastructure of the organizations that we work with after we have been able to now understand these items. So this is a very dynamic field because as we move on, the threats move on with the trends that are coming up. So today there might be some attack that we might try to analyze as threat intelligence specialists, but now with time we'll find that we are done with it. It may not happen to us. There'll be another one that is coming. So it's an endless cycle. As long as the company is breathing, security is very necessary. So also it helps us to anticipate for potential threats so that even if something happens to us, it might not be of that much impact, or secondly, we might be able to foresee it and prevent it before it fully becomes effective. So that's how I would summarize threat intelligence.
And we have maybe so far we have classified these cybersecurity tasks as either defensive or offensive. So we'd like maybe to categorize this one as proactive, in that you are studying the threats that are maybe common to your organization or common to the data you are handling, and then now developing targeted solutions from an analysis of these threats. That's why it's called cyber threat intelligence. So I'd like us to proceed to the threat intelligence life cycle, because we also did pen testing life cycle. There are those steps that are conventionally followed by majority of the organizations in cyber threat intelligence. So I believe there are 5, and just to start us up, maybe it's collection. You have to use, no matter the method you're going to use to obtain this data, there has to be collection, whether it's open source, and you are going to come into that and find some of the sources, whether it's open source, whether it's commercially available, whether you are scrapping websites or anything to do with that, the first step is collection. So that from there you can now study this and you try to check for some repetitive patterns so that you can come to some conclusions.
Yeah. So on the collection part, there is a concept in cybersecurity called OSINT.
Yeah.
OSINT is an acronym. An acronym that is used to represent open source intelligence. And something is open source, and something that is one, freely, and secondly, publicly available. So what is it that we can do with this open source information so that we can now turn into threat, some intelligence aspect? So int in OSINT, and then now there's threat, there is intelligence in the threat intelligence bit. So you see there's a connection. We are now using this so that we can be able to get data. Getting data is one thing, and that is what will lead us to the second phase, which is now the processing of this data that you have obtained from the OSINT process. There are also other sources that can come up through partnerships. Others might decide to purchase some data. For example, some researchers might say we have data feeds from, let's say, 2015 to 2024, and it's not publicly available. So you are just given something like a sample so that you can see what you can extract out of it. On the processing bit, that is where we now able to obtain insights from this data. There might be need for data analysis. Analysis procedure is reliant on various automated or manual tools. So in the automative bit, there are open source tools that can be used to analyze what you have been able to obtain. And then there is now the manual tools whereby, for example, people get into scripts and also programming languages such as Python for analysis, for cleaning, for visualization and extraction of insights out of the data. So processes that can be used in this procedure include natural language processing and also use of anomaly detection tools for this procedure, and also some data mining along the way. So on the analysis phase, what is it that maybe happens?
So there are something we mentioned in previous episodes called indicators of compromise. So here in this bit, I think the cybersecurity analysts or the members of the SOC in that team, they analyze this already collected and processed data to try and find or determine or establish some similarities or repetitive patterns.
Yes.
And there is that bit what we call indicators of compromise, and now they can establish whether they are vulnerable to certain attacks. And I believe threat intelligence, as you mentioned, it can involve automation, but it can also involve manually reading blogs and maybe referring to some of the established CSVs and such things.
Yeah. So on that, there is also the aspect of indicators of attacks and indicators of compromise. So an attack is something that tries to bring down. The compromise bit is now where we are talking about what is it that people are extracting without any form of tampering. So that's just things like firewalls coming so that you can see whatever comes in and then whatever comes out. After now we have been able to extract this intelligence, we are now disseminating it to various parties. These parties include the stakeholders, which may be the owners of the company. So you might tell them from the intelligence that you have been able to gather, you've seen that there are these groups that are targeting fintech organizations, and this is how they work. So if this is how they work, this is what we need to do so that we can improve our systems so that in case they may be planning or may attack us in the near future, this is what we'll be able to do so that we can be able to patch this up. And then after that, there's also the aspect of security teams whereby we now tell them these are our findings, do 1, 2, 3, install a firewall and configure it this way, install a keylogger, or rather a security incident and event management system, and let it handle things this way. So we are also trying to see how is it that you can also be getting reports and alerts depending on now the threats that you have been able to counter. We're trying to counter. Yeah.
And also the aspect of threat intelligence sharing comes on this section of dissemination, where some organization might specialize in coming up with this threat intelligence analysis and then share to maybe fintech organizations or medical fields and so on. So I believe the next bit is feedback, but you mentioned integration with other tools, existing security infrastructure like the CM and the SOA tools. So cyber threat intelligence is not a standalone system. You usually like integrate to approach the security of your infrastructure in a holistic point of view. So I believe there is a tool. I was thinking it I think over the weekend, and I saw it allows you to integrate maybe threat feeds from other sources, which might be commercially available or free. And you can also like come up with your own in-house threat intelligence feeds, which might be somewhat tedious and tiresome, but maybe the advantage of it's specific to your niche, and it helps you to kind of mold your security in the perfect way. So the last bit of this cycle is the feedback, and this is where I think we usually measure I don't know if I'll call it the return on investment, but you kind of measure how this cyber threat intelligence or this threat intelligence is affecting your organization. Has it helped us maybe reduce the number of intrusions and breaches over the past 6 months or over the past maybe a quarter, depending on your organization?
So there is also the aspect of performance. You might also be having KPIs, key performance indicators, which vary from one organization to the other. There are some who would say we don't want any attacks at all. The others would say even if the attacks might be there, we want to see all of them counted and to what extent. So there's also some reports that can also be generated on the feedback stage, which is on the last phase, whereby now on the next instance when this procedure will be redone again, whatever was learned and whatever downfalls that were there in the previous cycle of threat intelligence, they can be now taken forward as a project in the next phase, because it's just a one go down cycle or procedure to secure the systems.
Majority of the things in cybersecurity, we see that cyber threat intelligence is a cycle, and in the long run, it helps organizations respond to threats as they emerge. Because if you have, maybe in layman's terms, a database of the threats or the indicators of compromise, immediately a malicious activity in your network infrastructure emerges, you're able to combat it. So with that, on the next section, we're going to talk about the types of threat intelligence. And this might be familiar, especially in management, because there are specifically terms used in management. And just an overview to categorize the three types is strategic threat intelligence, tactical, and operation. And I believe the difference comes in the period, or the narrowness of the attack, or of what we are trying to achieve in this type of threat intelligence. So strategic threat intelligence, just like strategic planning, is long term, and whatever aim the security system may have in mind when coming up with a strategic threat intelligence plan or conducting strategic threat intelligence is long term. And I believe the aspect of compliance comes in here, and the aspect of patching your systems in the long run comes in here. I believe I've explained that correctly.
That is true. So on the other hand, there is now the aspect of tactical threat intelligence. So this is where we become a little bit more specific due to various factors, due to various some research, if we may call it, that has been done. So we might narrow down to handling a vulnerability or a set of vulnerabilities per unit time. So, for example, we have seen there are insecure configurations or improperly done configurations. So we sit down and look what are the threats that can come out of this, how have people been attacked because of insecure misconfigurations. English. And then from there you're able to build up and let these things fall into place progressively. So that's on the tactical bit. And then there's now on the operational side, which is now gathering information about the threats such as the malware and also other social engineering strategies such as phishing. And then we are using it to support day-to-day operations such as incident response activities. So out of the operations that are done out of these attacks, what is it that we can use as a leveraging point for now improving the security aspects? And then these three types of methods work together hand in hand, the long term, the medium term, and the short term, whether we are trying to cover all threats at once, one threat a unit time, or maybe with regards to a system as we have already discussed, so that you can be able to understand the threat landscape holistically and be able to make sure that our organizations are safe against cyber attacks.
So kind of like the way tactics, techniques, and procedures are aligned. Tactics is broad, techniques narrows down more, and then procedures are the granular activities. So just to kind of connect the two, just for the understanding purpose, not directly related, but in terms of the analogy, yeah, kind of related. So on the next section, we're going to talk about the sources of threat intelligence. You mentioned something to do with commercial open source intelligence, which is publicly available and it can be commercially obtained. Industries or organizations can have this threat intelligence feed developed in-house and so on and so forth. So that is what we're going to cover in the next session, which is sources of threat intelligence. To kick us up, open source threat intelligence, and you kind of connected open source and threat intelligence at the beginning of this episode. But just to kind of explain it again, this is publicly and freely available intelligence. So there are established organizations or established sources where you can find well collected and organized threat intelligence feeds, or where you can integrate those threat feeds into your organizations. And an example is Alien Vault, OTX. I believe that is familiar to maybe the people in cybersecurity.
Yeah, so I think it was one of my first tools that I worked with, and I was learning this process. There are others, but this was my first one. And that tool, the more you know how to configure it, like the scientific or the technological operation behind it, the more it's like it has a lot of features that it would take you some good time to go through the documentation, but once you've been able to master it, you are good to go. It's just clicking and moving on. Yeah, so these come from these are open source tools, but you'll find that there are other people who, yes, they are open source tools that are already there, but now there are people who commercialize them. There may be for various purposes, or maybe the commercial tool is solving some problem that the open source tools do not have, or maybe they are more efficient, others for regulation, but majorly is just what, from experience, it's been more of trying to cover up on what these open source tools do not have. For example, this one has a better user interface, this one has a better presentation of reports, this one collects more information. So it depends with that extra step that an end user might need to go in order to meet these objectives. That's why now the second type of threat intelligence, which is the commercialized threat intelligence, comes in. So an example of these ones, it's such as the recorded future and the Relia quest. Yeah, so there might be a cost that can be attached to it. It may be a one-time purchase, or maybe based on some kind of frequency, whether monthly, quarterly, or even annually. So it's upon you to now decide on which one you would prefer.
You'll find that they come at a cost, but maybe the effectiveness is to be championed or promoted.
Yeah.
But on other bits, maybe some organizations might not have these funds, and that is where our third option comes in, which is internal threat intelligence.
Yeah.
So this is a really manually or whatever way you may use, collecting your own intelligence. analyzing your network traffic and checking the data that is to and from your endpoints, and maybe feeding it in maybe a system, maybe OpenCTI, and now analyzing it, or maybe integrating data from your intrusion detection systems and your firewall and so on, and really using this to kind of shape up your security infrastructure.
Yeah. So one good example of an internal threat intelligence, because we are not securing, we are trying to gain information about what we will secure. So one good thing is a tool that says hack me if you can, and that's no other but honeypot and a honeynet, which is a collection of many honeypots. So when we are saying attack me if you can, so we are logging the data that is transmitted from the attacker to the honeypots. After we've been able to record it as a scapegoat system, we're able to use it as an internal threat intelligence methodology. So we are picking it up. We are now trying to extract insights. We are seeing that this person attacked us through OpenSSH and was able to gain access and tried to maybe steal some funds but was not successful. So what do we need to do? For example, we need to maybe implement fail to ban. That's an example. So out of this, the next time this person does it, you'll find that it's the same system, but some security upgrades have been done to it, all because of the internal threat intelligence that have come to it. There may be the main advantage of it is that it's good for people who are trying to carry out advanced persistent threats, but the disadvantage is that you are only limited to what you collect. So when a new attacker comes in, you might not be able to counter that strategy fully, but now you'll need to improve on other ways, maybe through indicators, so that you can be able to gain information about it.
Yeah, so on the other bit, two more to go. There is the threat intelligence sharing, where maybe an organization might share its finding, or maybe, so to say, threat fields with other organization. An organization might specialize in collecting this threat intelligence, and this is where you find that these systems kind of integrate maybe threat feeds from the MITRE attack framework and so on, and they kind of use this data in their security operations center to try and come up with a threat model, and to kind of try and navigate through the system and determine their security posture or how they might be attacked. So this is where you find where these frameworks like the MITRE we have been talking about, they come in handy, and I believe it's freely available. Yeah. So on the last bit is dark web intelligence, and this might be challenging, somewhat challenging, but things to do with web scraping can come in here, where you can just maybe scrap the front web where everyone can access, or you can go deeper and try to find some of the threat feeds in the dark web.
Yeah, so the dark web is somehow like I don't like calling it a market, but somewhere that people who are into the cybersecurity space gather to exchange ideas for business and maybe any other kinds of objectives that
for learning purposes.
It's rare to find learning purposes in the dark web.
It's always learning purposes.
So, but yes, there's learning in it, but also people have different objectives as they get there, you know. So even as you're getting over there, one of the objectives can be now to gain some threat intelligence. So you might even find attack groups over there that are trying to recruit people. I think we were in that event some time back, whereby this threat intelligence person was telling us that they even try to find ways for them to be able to get into these big hacker groups. So they are trying to like cooperate, give them some dummy information, trying to even participate in the events, just moving along with them and trying to fit in. But their objective might not be to hack as they do, or maybe to compromise systems or to lead to attacks, but it's to gain more information that is sensitive based on how these people work. So it's like we are trying to social engineer the attackers. That's also another thing that I've seen people doing, and it's sometimes it might yield fruit, sometimes it might not, but some people also consider it as more of a medium to long-term procedure, because you can't just tell them, hey, I want information. You just need to find like a storyline that you can use to merge or to blend in with the script that they have.
Yeah, I believe that is accurate. And on the next bit, I'd like us to go through strategies for analyzing threat intelligence. And in this section, I believe it's crucial because, as you mentioned, this threat intelligence, we are not protecting an organization or improving our infrastructure. We are trying to model or in other terms, threat modeling, and kind of understand our infrastructure, and from there we can be able to now proceed to protecting it by maybe sharing this threat intelligence data with other sections of the organization, maybe the defensive part of the security teams.
Yeah, so I'm happy that you've also talked about threat modeling. So out of threat intelligence, we're able to get a threat model. We're able to say, what attacks do we have? Who will attack us? How will he attack us? How long might the attack take? What can we use to identify the attack? So it's like we are in a think tank, like trying to say to answer the sample questions that I've given and many more. So do not be limited, always be open-minded. I think that's one of the best thing that you can do to yourself in the cybersecurity domain. Do not be limited to just that one tool. Try to explore other tools and see reasons why you will need to transition to some other tool or maintain the same tool, or even learn new tools that are coming up that you can be able to keep up with the trend. So that's now what I would give my contributions on the threat modeling bit, as we are now moving forward into the strategies for analyzing this threat. So you can analyze just based on thought. That's how.
Before we continue, a word from our sponsors. Shieldcast is brought to you by Coding and Kahawa Developers Community and Funlinks Entertainment. First up, we have Coding and Kahawa, your ultimate online community for everything tech. Whether you're diving into AI, mastering machine learning, enhancing your cybersecurity skills, or delving into DevSecOps, Coding and Kahawa is the place for you. It's where developers at all levels come together to hone their programming skills and connect with industry professionals and peers. Ready to elevate your tech game? Join the Coding and Kahawa WhatsApp community using the link in the description. Our second sponsor is Funlinks Entertainment, an edtech platform that is revolutionizing how kids learn online. Funlinks empowers children with a premium learning experience that sparks their imagination and encourages collaborative creation with their peers. Their mission? To foster creativity and innovation, inspiring kids to reach their full potential. Curious about how Funlinks can ignite your child's creativity? Find the link to their website in our bio. Alright, let's continue. And I believe that is why you find this CTI being integrated into maybe the defensive strategies of an organization. Because, for example, when you're improving, just an example before we proceed to that section, maybe improving DNA security, you keep a list or study a list of malicious hosts, and maybe you red flag them. And now the defensive work of the security teams will be a little bit easier because you already have a list of maybe malicious hosts. And I believe one good practice is secure the DNS. I think you have maybe secured over 50% of your organization, because you are protecting your organization before communication even starts. And I believe I just wanted to mention that bit. So the strategies for analyzing threat intelligence. So we might have mentioned this in previous parts of this episode, but I want us to start with data mining and analysis, where we said it can be maybe as an example scraping the websites, scraping the internet and the dark web.
So this calls forth for what I was doing as a problem solving aspect, because you'll find, and we've discussed it a lot, whereby people focus on security but not focus on the data. So you might need also to be if we may call it a jack of all trades, but not all trades as of such, but just add an extra layer of education to your skill set, especially when it comes to analytics. Being in security is good, but you also need to be able to analyze this data. There you can automate them, you can go the manual way depending on your preference, and also try to build up interactive communication strategies, such as through the use of dashboards to summarize. Yeah, so as you're trying to build up based on these charts, you might just be able to even extract more conclusions, because you're summarizing it, you're able to clean it properly. For example, able to also extract outliers and anything that may be anomalous in the data that you are collecting. You can also advance it to maybe some machine learning, and from there through the whole pipeline. You might not get into it fully, but I'll just give the stages, which are like obtaining the data. You clean, you analyze, you visualize, you now prepare it for machine learning, you carry out the algorithms, you tune them, and then now you deploy them. So after you've been able also to do this, so you are trying to engage analytics as a whole, so that you can be able to get insights that can be very helpful in the threat intelligence process. So examples of tools that you can use in this process: you might go with Python, you might go with R. You need their visualization strategies such as ggplot. I think on the Python bit you can go with Plotly, Cufflinks, Matplotlib, Seaborn, and also you can even integrate intelligence tools on the business side, such as Power BI to build dashboards. You can also engage Tableau. You can also, they think, Power Click and the rest, so that you can be able to build up on it. So on the side, you can also even try to consider, will I need to buy these tools, or will I also go with open source tools? But at the moment, I think open source tools have served me a good purpose up to this time, based on the examples that I've already given.
And I believe these visualizations comes in handy, and also where we mentioned on one of the bits of the cycle of cyber threat intelligence on feedback. I believe most of these tools, even for example, the Hive, which is I think an intrusion detection system, but kind of focuses on incident response. They come with inbuilt visualization tools, and they leverage graphs and things to do with that, to kind of give you a holistic picture of where you are as an organization.
Yeah, so you can also interact with another one called the Elk Stack, Elasticsearch, Kibana, and it's all in a tool called Waza. Some people call it Waza, others Wazoo. I think it's a very good tool. I've interacted with it. Very beautiful dashboards, very interactive, very real time, and it's open source by the way. So you can also play with it, interact with it locally, see the configurations that are there, and you'll be able to get a lot from it.
So on the second bit is threat actor profiling, and on the strategies. So profiling, kind of trying to understand the motivation behind the threat actors. So motivation analysis comes in.
Motivation analysis. What is motivation analysis?
Trying to analyze what is the driving force behind someone, a threat actor.
So you are like trying to get into their minds to understand them more. Motivation analysis.
You can secure what you don't know. And the second bit is on threat actor profiling. This is where the bit about TTPs comes in, because they kind of give information about the motive of the attacker.
So I think in our previous episodes we had discussed clearly about TTPs. We had some very good number of minutes just to discuss about them. So you can also be checking our previous episodes so that you can be able to gain insights. So based on these TTPs, you're able to identify what are the strategies. Like, let's just call them strategies and steps. So you need to first have a strategy, and then you advance it to the steps, so that you can be able to now know what next for us in this process. So on that aspect, there is also trying to determine the source of an attack or a piece of intelligence. So you might see some kind of attack through the use of a particular tool, and you'll just automatically know that it was this hacker group that was that carried out this attack. So that's on on the side of threat actor profiling.
Kind of like attributing some movements or some strategies to some certain threat actors.
Yes.
So on the third strategy, is indicators of compromise analysis, and we mentioned this time and again. So you first have to like identify these iOS or the IOCs, and just like in the previous step of attribution, there is now this bit of IOC correlation, and maybe there are some types of threats or some types of TTPs that can be connected to some threat actors, and this data is kind of usually helpful to kind of ease in the steps or ease in the process of securing an infrastructure. And on the last bit is prioritization, because you'll more often than not you'll find the organization is vulnerable or maybe prone to many types of attacks from many threat actors from many directions. So there is the aspect of prioritization, where you kind of channel your energy, resources, and time to maybe critical threat actors.
So,
or critical vulnerabilities rather.
That is true. So you're just narrowing down, focusing on it because of some various reasons, but also as you're doing so, do not forget the others. So it's good, and then after that, when all is set, move as fast as possible to maybe the next one, or even now try to go back to the holistic approach. So it depends with where you are, the infrastructure you have, the time frame, the resources, and the rest. So you just need to sit down, write down, plan, and then from there have a workflow of what you need to do.
So on the next bit, which is another strategy, I believe the last but not least, and we have mentioned it, is threat modeling.
I think we have already discussed fully about it. So just knowing how they'll attack based on the questions that I've had shared some minutes ago, and then from there you now to try to answer those questions with security implementations or even improvement of policies or addition of new ones.
Not to dwell so much on it, kind of developing a scenario, a hypothetical scenario, and you try to like develop your security infrastructure around that scenario, so that maybe in real world situations, when a certain scenario repeats itself, your organization or your security teams are ready. So I believe we expanded on that before we reached at it as a strategy. So on the last part, I don't believe it's the last part, but intelligence fusion. So fusion.
When you are fusing, there is fuse for power, and then
there's fuse for biology. Using like combining two.
Biology. So when you are fusing, you are bringing together. So it's intelligence from different sources. You bring them together so that they can be able to carry out some end objective. So it's stronger than the others, but you can also fuse wrongly. You can get insights, but they'll not help you. So just be keen, and everything shall be well.
That bit before we go to the last strategy, you mentioned, you flagged that it can be fused wrongly. So it's not necessarily that you fuse like or you combine threat intelligence sources from multiple external sources. Your fusing also entails incorporating your own in-house threat intelligence sources, which is analyzing your traffic, your network traffic rather, and also maybe incorporating some of the sources, or maybe trusted sources, or you can maybe go for a commercial one. So just to kind of paint a better picture of your threat landscape. So on the last bit is threat intelligence sharing. And I believe we have also emphasized this in the past about the aspect of collaboration. So this might be internally among different teams in the organization, and also it can be using obtaining external sources from other threat intelligence organizations. And you mentioned recorded future. and others which are like Alien Vault, which are kind of free and or open source and not highly costly to implement within your organization. But on the last bit concerning intelligence sharing, I'd like to flag something related to ethical consideration. And this bit will always arise so long as you are handling user data. So we are going to talk about it in another, I believe, the last bit of this episode on ethical consideration. But yeah, it is crucial because there is the scope, but there is also what you're going to do with the data. You must stay within the ethical guidelines as a pen tester or as a security analyst. So on the last bit, or rather on the next section, we're going to try and establish a connection between threat intelligence and cybersecurity. So trying to kind of help us determine what CTI enables an organization to do.
Yeah. So the main thing, or one of the main connections that we've been able to see between cybersecurity and threat intelligence is the anticipation. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are preparing for something that we do not know that whether it will come or not, and if it does not come, it's still not to our disadvantage because there's something that we are able to do in that preparation stage that assisted us in the improvement of our cybersecurity posture. The second thing is that it will assist us to prioritize the risks. We'll be able to ask ourselves, yes, we have 7 risks that we have, but which one is it that might most probably come? Which one is it that might have the highest impact? Which one of it might lead to a breach and the rest? So you're also trying to attach some Q&As so that you can try to prioritize these risks from the first one to the last one. And also, the other connection that is there is the fact that it assists us to improve on incident response. So yes, we had known there was this hacker group, it hacks through this method, but now it has come to us. So we say that if this kind of scenario comes up, what is it that we'll be able to do so that systems can be restored, that we might not cause a huge breach? Did we, even if they, for example, the last episode I think we are talking about, if they have stole, they might not be able to decrypt the data. So we are like trying to create some cycle of enhancement so that time might be saved and little or no resources might be lost. I
believe there is a strong correlation between incident response and CTI and cyber threat intelligence, or rather threat intelligence as the topic of this episode. So tools like the Hive, which are focusing on incident response plan, you'll find they can be easily integrated with other tools for open source or tools for cyber threat intelligence, and we mentioned that in the OpenCTI. So you kind of integrate the two to work hand in hand and directly support your incident response plan, and overall it kind of helps you develop your security posture as an organization. And you, Kevin, mentioned that in the end you might not be attacked, but it is not to your disadvantage. Overall security of your organization or the security infrastructure is improved. So on the next bit, as we try to wind up this episode, will be some of the tools, technologies that are used in threat intelligence. On this subtopic rather, or section, where we'll be talking about threat intelligence technologies and tools, we are going to classify them into 3, which is data collection, data analysis, and some of the threat intelligence platforms. So you kind of already gave a breakdown of some of the tools, especially with regards to analysis of threat intelligence feeds, but we are going to kind of run through them again. So on the data collection tools, we said we're going to classify them into 3. So data collection tools, these are primarily the aspects, the tools in the beginning stages of threat intelligence collections. So web scraping is a dark horse in, do I call it a dark horse? It's a major player rather, that's not that's crucial in threat intelligence rather. So there is web scraping, and we mentioned it can be in the dark web or just on open source platforms where everyone can access. And we also mentioned the in-built or in-house threat intelligence, and that is where the next tool comes in, which is a network traffic analyzer. So this is where you implement tools like Wireshark, which are so famous in the security industry. And you try to come up with threat fields within your own infrastructure and within your own data.
Yeah. So also it needs a lot of professionalism when it comes to understanding how these tools work. You might know how to set it up, but the utilization, it's not giving fruit as expected. Yeah.
So on the next bit, which is our next category, remember we said we are going to classify them into 3. Data collection, data analysis, and we are going to talk about some of the threat intelligence platforms. So on the data analysis tools, the aspect of data visualization comes in also here, and but just to start, we have not mentioned things to do with artificial intelligence in threat intelligence. So natural language processing comes in over here in the data analysis tools, and also machine learning algorithms can be implemented, though I've only heard in podcast in modern systems. And the last aspect is where you mentioned table AU, and this comes in data visualization.
Tableau.
Huh?
Some people call it tableau, that's the way you do, but we all correct in whatever we.
So it's a commercial data visualization platform, and now you can integrate it in your cybersecurity systems to kind of like visuals and graphics, they communicate more information more than words. So kind of come up, help you come into conclusions faster and save a lot of time and resources. So on the last bit is cyber threat intelligence or threat intelligence platforms, and we mentioned this as in the recorded future and the alien vault, just to mention but a few. So there is a centralized platform in Palo Alto, the Cortex XDR.
So before we get into these tools, just a reminder about their categories. They are open source and they're also commercial. So as I said earlier on, depending on your preference and whatever that is needed to suit your needs, you can just go up with any. So for example, when you talk about Palo Alto, the CrowdStrike, and the other tools, you'll find that they are more of commercial. There's also QRadar, which is also another commercial one, but you can also go with open source tools. There are people who decided to build portfolio projects out of threat intelligence tools. So you can also check out a lot of tools have been made on GitHub. So check on GitHub so that you can be able to get various tools that people have been able to build as their portfolio projects, but still yet can be able to serve corporate companies and even organizations in a very efficient way. So you can also be able to integrate these tools. For example, 2 threat intelligence tools, even if it's not integration, they're able to work simultaneously, so that tool A can be able to gather some kind of information, and then tool B can be able to gain a different level of information. And that's what I usually love about cybersecurity, is that there is always a confluence. When you're talking about a confluence, you're able to see some kind of threat, and then the tool A can give you some insights about that threat, and then tool B can also give you some insights which they are now put together, so that you can now be able to improve the security of our systems efficiently.
And we mentioned Hive, which is an incident response plan platform, and you mentioned QRadar in your explanation, which I believe is a CM tool. So this only serves to emphasize that threat intelligence is not like a single one-man island process in security. It only serves to complement other processes and other systems in cybersecurity. So on the next bit, I believe is the final one, and we mentioned that this always comes so long as you're handling user data, is the ethical considerations in threat intelligence. So these simply things to do with data privacy. And staying within your scopes. We mentioned the bit of scraping data from the internet. And for example, maybe in the health industry, there are certain regulations that bound you and regulate how you use certain data to kind of model your security infrastructure.
So along the way, as you're maybe collecting threat intelligence, we might unintentionally land into confidential data along the way. So what you need to do is to acknowledge first of all and say, I have confidential data and this is how I came in hand to pick it. And even though I've picked it, this is what I can do to ensure that it does not land into unauthorized parties and the rest. So it's more of we are trying to build up on some infrastructure and acknowledge that some data is being collected. Even if it's being collected, it's still in secure custody, and you can't avoid picking it up along the way.
Yeah, sometimes you really can't avoid picking data up because it's useful in your processes, and that is where the bit of consent comes in, and also transparency. So clearly outlining how this data will be used, and also sticking within your legal boundaries when you are doing whatever you're doing. So there is an aspect of misuse of intelligence, and this maybe can be, as an example, in fintech, when you're collecting maybe data related to passwords, maybe, or maybe even IP addresses, not even specific to fintech industries, just in any other industry. So there is the aspect of misuse of intelligence, where rogue pen testers can maybe try to divert their processes and try to use this maybe for monetary gain or for resale.
So that's where we have been able to see a kind of attack called insider threats. For example, you are the threat intelligence lead in an organization, and you have been able to collect some patterns along the way of maybe threat intelligence or other attacks that can be done on your category of organization and can be mirrored to others. So you are weaponizing that threat intelligence that you have collected so that you can be able to now attack other organizations. So it's something that you also need to avoid and be very keen on.
So the bit of intelligence sharing also comes in, and we mentioned accountability and transparency. It also comes in terms of threat intelligence sharing. We mentioned that organizations can come up with threat intelligence feeds, which in turn apply to other similar niche organizations, and this is where the aspect of threat intelligence sharing comes in. So during this process, transparency and accountability is key, and also in the commercially available threat intelligence feeds, you mentioned it can be maybe sold per use or per user or for a period of time. The one holding the information or selling the information will need accountability that if I give you this information or these threat feeds, that you are going to use them in maybe the right purpose. So on the last bit, before we go to a bit of bias and discrimination, there is the aspect of ethical dilemmas. And I believe ethical hackers encounter this every day, not only in threat intelligence or threat intelligence specialists.
So when it comes to ethical dilemmas, it's somehow a temptation, and there's also the aspect of it being some thought between decision A and decision B. Decision A is better than decision B, but there's some cost attached to it. There are some implications attached to it. On the now temptation aspect is where, yes, I am secure, I've gained this intelligence, but if the government knew that I was collecting it, they would come for me. So what do I do? Should I go silent? Should I comply? Should I update? So it's also a very huge topic, and even if we are trying to do some good, we'll find that some sin is being attached to it. Like
So
that's
literally testing your faith. So the bit of ethical dilemma, you find you go with option A, you are maybe going against your ethical standards or principles, but ethical maybe more profitable. And maybe as an example, targeted advertisement, you might collect maybe some bits of information, and you find that these patterns, maybe a pool of 100 people, you can recommend a pool of 70 of the 100 to maybe a certain security solution, or maybe a password manager, or things to do with that. Just an example. And literally testing your faith, but I wouldn't say that organizations have fully gone the ethical way, and that is why we're discussing this bit of ethical dilemmas. So on the next part, as we conclude this episode, is bias and discrimination.
So when you talk about bias, it's when we are trying to lean on one side and forget that there's the other side of the coin. They are saying that we'll be able to collect heads, but you're forgetting that they are the tails. So one of the biases that you've seen that is coming into place is algorithmic bias. So when you talk about algorithmic bias, is whereby we are saying our tool X is able to collect this kind of threat, and is telling us this is, you need to watch out on this. But as we take keen look on it, we are just seeing it's a person who is just sending an email.
And you find like this is kind of different compared to like when you're developing LLMs, because you find the repercussions of algorithmic bias in LLMs is just maybe misinformation and something to do with that. But in a threat intelligence platform, when you're platform maybe, or when you are biased or maybe when you are implementing a mail which has algorithmic bias, the repercussions are kind of serious, because you will have only one side of the problem. You'll only protect one. When you are threat modeling, you'll only threat model with only one side in mind. And now when you're hit from the back, it will be kind of a catastrophe. So kind of the different but same thing on algorithmic bias. And there is the aspect of national security versus individual rights in cybersecurity, maybe threat intelligence organization, or maybe law enforcement. I believe that is the better example. Might have to deny someone's privacy to enforce law.
Or enhance security.
And maybe in movies it's termed a matter of national security. And I believe hypothetically this is given through maybe judges in the background. They don't have to give it publicly. They just give those law enforcers they go ahead to deny someone's human privacy is a human right these days. Deny them their privacy for the sake of national security, or for the sake of enforcing the law.
So as I had talked about earlier on, so it's a battle between, yes, you are trying to secure, but even if you are securing, there's something extra that you are getting that you had not mentioned. And I'm happy with the Data Protection Act, because you're able to state, I am collecting this and it is for this purpose. So you cannot collect beyond the scope of what you are needing. But even if there is the aspect of you're not collecting beyond the scope, which is a characteristic of what an organization needs to do, by mistake you might be collecting data indirectly that was not out of scope, that was not in the scope that you had initially wanted. So it creates some kind of dilemma. Do we need to change this system? Even if we have configured, we are in its optimum stage, you cannot collect less than that. So it's upon you now to think critically that maybe even if it was not your intention to collect that sensitive data and it's not helping you, it's the only option you have. So you can also outline it that it's the only option you have, and it's through this tool.
So essentially having a balance between achieving your objective and protecting someone's privacy, and trying to avoid that overreach or enforcing an excessive surveillance in the name of collecting intelligence. So on the final bit of this episode is we're going to talk about some on the same section but global implications, and you find that organizations are bound to many regulations, and the only thing that requires them, they don't really need to be in that region. For example, in Europe, to be bound by GDPR, they only need to handle the data of Europeans or relating to the European nations. So a million of regulations bounding organizations, and this is where our global implications comes in.
So also on the global implication side, the organizations that even if they are doing some kind of activity indirectly in the country, they are not in a viable state to comply, you know. So we are seeing that they are doing something, but you don't have something to call them to comply, or if you have not complied to this, you cannot be able to do some activity X. So that's why I'm happy with the global standards, that even if you are not you're not in that country and you're doing businesses with regards to that area, you need also to there are things that you need to watch out as a bare minimum from a global perspective.
And this is where I believe you can collaborate with international partners, because especially maybe when you're dealing with different regions, there are a million, or there are various differences in legal or in the legal practices in these different regions, or even the cultural aspect of it. There are differences in the culture when you're dealing with data of people from different regions, and this is where I have to emphasize collaboration with international entities, and being mindful of global surveillance, because the way data is treated in Kenya is not the way data is treated in maybe in Europe, or maybe in the US. But one aspect that remains constant is that privacy is a human right. So this collaboration and kind of trying to bring in stakeholders from other international bodies to kind of paint a good picture or kind of steer forward your threat intelligence is key. So that has been threat intelligence. We have tried to expound on the crucial parts of threat intelligence, and if you feel there is something we might have mentioned, or we should have mentioned rather, be free to pin it or put it in the comment section, or tag us in Twitter or X. I still call it Twitter. Yeah, that has been Threat Intelligence by Shieldcast. I have been your host, George Ndongo. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, and kindly rate us on Spotify. We are trying to help many people get access to this quality cybersecurity content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. That is Shield_cast. That is Shield_cast. I've been your host, George Ndongo.
Yes, and I've been Kevin Mugo. Thank you very much. We look forward to meeting all of you in our next episode. So let's share, let's like, let's subscribe.
Yeah.
Have a good time ahead.
Yeah, thank you.